Back downstairs, the palace kitchens hum again. But tonight you're not hovering over fruit or fire. You're trailing the quietest person in the room. She's small, quick, wrapped in a brown robe stained with steam and resin. She carries no knives, no ladles, and yet every cook steps aside as she passes. She's not a chef, she's the scent mistress. And you're about to learn that no imperial Vietnamese dessert, especially Kim, was complete without her. Her work doesn't start in the kitchen. It starts in the chamber next door, behind a heavy silk curtain, where the air is thick with curls of smoke and the floor is lined with clay pots, dried petals, and resin chips arranged in neat bundles. She moves among them like a librarian, selecting a few strands of burned cinnamon bark, 3 crushed jasmine stamens, and something that smells oddly like sandalwood but sharper, darker. She grinds them together using a small marble plate and an ivory pestle. No measuring, just instinct. This is scent layering, fa hung, and it's how the palace infused desserts with invisible elegance. The goal wasn't to taste the smell. It was to let the aroma rise off the spoon like a ghost of something remembered, and scent, here, was status. Forget sugar. Forget fruit. If your ice cream carried the faintest trace of phoenix orchid or agarwood, you weren't just eating, you were ascending. These weren't flavors you could just stumble into. These were perfumed, controlled, powerful. A kind of culinary whisper that said, I'm not just elite. I'm fragrance verified by decree. Scent mistresses were trained like calligraphers. Years of practice to learn how much burned clove was too much, how long rose hips should dry before they go bitter, how to temper citrus peel with basil to avoid overwhelming the cream. Some notes had to be coaxed out by steaming, others smoked, others bloomed only after freezing. One document from the 18th century describes a summer Kim that warmed the chest while cooling the tongue, thanks to a combination of pandan, dried ginger root, and a whisper of camphor. You imagine a spoonful of that entering your mouth like a breeze and exiting like a warm sigh. The scent mistress turns to you and asks, gently, if you've ever had air that tastes like memory. You blink. She smiles, then places a sliver of green-dyed rice paper on your tongue. At first, nothing. Then, soft sugar, roasted tea, and a sudden flash of something floral. Rose. No. Peach blossom. It vanishes before you can name it fully. She nods once. That's the starter, she says, and moves on. You follow her into the kitchen's cooler chamber, where dessert stewards await with open containers of nearly finished Kim. This is the final infusion. Not stirred in, not cooked. Wafted. The scent blend is burned gently near the bowl, and a silk canopy is drawn overhead to trap the scented smoke inside. The ice cream rests for 7 minutes, absorbing the faintest trace of whatever's burning. Historians still debate whether this method actually affected taste or if it was all ceremonial flair. But court records are clear. If the emperor's ice cream didn't carry a subtle trace of the heavens, it was considered incomplete. And sometimes, this part went terribly wrong. One notorious kitchen accident involved a rogue infusion of pickled garlic smoke during a summer ritual. The emperor, not amused, reportedly spit the dessert into a lacquered vase and stormed out. The scent mistress in charge vanished from palace records after that day. Some say reassigned to the spice sellers. Others claim she faked her death and opened a noodle shop under an assumed name. Historians still argue whether the incident really happened or was just an exaggerated parable about ego and aroma. But the work went on. Tonight's Kim blend is durian coconut with a hint of crushed lotus seed, but it's the fragrance on top that seals it. The scent mistress lights a tiny bundle of dried gardenia wrapped in lemongrass, waves the smoke once over the bowl, then covers it with a cloth the color of storm clouds. 7 minutes. And while you wait, you learn this. Palace desserts weren't just eaten. They were prepared to be remembered. Flavor was fleeting, but smell could haunt you. Ask anyone who's ever opened a box of dried orange peel from their childhood or caught a whiff of their grandmother's steamed rice with ginger. Memory lives in the nose. And here, in the palace, memory is weaponized. When the canopy is lifted, the air smells like warmth and green things and something else. You lean in. Sweetness. Earth. The breath of a monsoon evening just after the rain. You take a bite, and then another, and suddenly you understand. It doesn't matter that you don't know what's in it. It doesn't matter that this recipe isn't written down anywhere, because it was never meant to be replicated. It was meant to be felt on the roof of your mouth, felt in the back of your throat, felt days later when you smell burning basil and something in your chest tightens without reason. That's the real magic of imperial ice cream. Not the resin, not the fruit, not even the freezing, but the after, the moment when you're alone in your room, the palace long asleep, and you suddenly remember something that never quite happened, but still feels true. You wake the next morning to the low hum of monsoon rain outside the palace walls. The kitchens are quieter now, no ceremonial tastings, no royal diners with poetic demands. But there's still a line forming by the garden gate. It's the staff queue. Gardeners, musicians, a few scribes, even a sleepy guard or two, they're all here for the same reason. Kim, not imperial Kim, not the perfumed, gold leaf type. No, this is what the palace cooks call Kim Dan John, people's ice cream. Still made with care, still frozen in the ancient pit with help from the old brick insulation, but with simpler ingredients. Mango if it's ripe, sweet corn if it's in season. Occasionally, just coconut milk and a pinch of salt, and no scent mistress in sight. You slide into line with them, rain flecking your sleeves. No one speaks. It's an almost religious ritual, heads down, hands out, silence broken only by the occasional sigh of satisfaction or the tap of a spoon against a clay bowl. Your turn comes. You get what's available, jackfruit and coconut with a drizzle of palm sugar syrup. The taste? Beautiful in its simplicity. No metaphors. No memories of emperors weeping into dessert bowls. Just cold sweetness, nutty cream, and the deep, bright slap of fruit. The kind of flavor that reminds you that luxury isn't always about gold leaf or gardenia smoke. It's about generosity, because here's a secret no one writes down. The imperial kitchen, for all its exclusivity, ran a shadow operation. Surplus fruit, turned into sherbets for the gardeners. Leftover coconut cream, stirred into rice noodles for the night guards. The cooks, exhausted after midnight service, often experimented with strange blends, lemongrass and taro, tamarind and salt plum, and served the results to whoever was still awake. And sometimes, just sometimes, the palace adopted one of those peasant flavors. Historians still argue whether a sour plum sorbet once served at a court banquet was born from a kitchen mistake or a groundskeeper's lunch. But we do know that the emperor declared it a taste of the people's resilience. Whatever that means. Probably just code for we ran out of mango again. You take another bite, and it hits you. Ice cream in this world, imperial or common, wasn't just about sweetness. It was about balance. Sweet with sour, cream with crunch, cold with heat. Even the bowls were chosen carefully. Ceramic for daily meals, lacquered wood for special events, bronze only on feast days. But some of the best kim came scooped into whatever vessel was at hand. A gourd shell, a paper fan, even a cupped lotus leaf that a record from 1783 notes a kitchen boy getting scolded for serving royal dessert in a chipped clay bowl with visible thumbprint. You'd think he'd be executed. But the emperor reportedly laughed and said, "It's still cold, isn't it?" Turns out, even monarchs have good days. The rain picks up, drumming gently on the palace tiles. You find a spot under the eaves and watch a small girl, maybe the daughter of a scribe, licking frozen coconut kim off a bamboo spoon with serious concentration. No rush, no drama, just ice cream, rain, and time. You wonder, suddenly, who made the first bowl? Not in the palace, but ever. Somewhere, someone had to be first. Not an emperor or a court chef. Just a curious soul with fruit, ice, and too much time on their hands. Historians still debate the origin. Some say Vietnamese villagers used natural cave ice in the far north. Others argue that freezing was introduced by Chinese merchants or adapted from Indian kulfi. But whoever did it first, they weren't trying to impress a king. They were trying to survive summer. And maybe, just maybe, they wanted a reason to smile. There's something about Kim that insists on joy. Even in times of famine, festivals saw small batches made with whatever was available: grated cassava, dried banana, a spoonful of fish sauce. Yes, really. Kids would crowd around, waiting for their turn, hoping the ice held out long enough for everyone. Some batches failed. Some were too salty, too runny, too weird. But the intent was always there. Something cold, something sweet, something shared. That's the flavor you're tasting now. Not perfection, not ceremony. Just a humble, rain-cooled morning and a spoonful of coconut cream that tells you, wordlessly, this moment is enough. You finish your bowl and walk back toward the kitchen, where the staff is already prepping for the evening meal. Someone's peeling taro in a corner. Someone else is cracking open green papayas. A scent mistress in training leans over a clay pot, trying to catch the precise second a strand of basil smokes, but doesn't burn. That it's not glamorous. It's not grand, but it's sacred in its own quiet way. Because even though the emperors are long gone and their golden bowls now sit in dusty museum cases, the art of Kim lives on, not in thrones or titles, but in the hands of cooks who still believe in the magic of cold sweetness on a hot day. And somewhere, you suspect, a ghost emperor is still watching, still tasting, still waiting for the next spoonful to take his breath away. Afternoon stretches across the palace like a warm cloth. The rain has stopped, and everything smells of wet stone, jasmine, and lingering charcoal smoke from the kitchens. But inside, the hum of dessert never ends that you're being ushered, again, into a quieter part of the palace. A side chamber, far from the main kitchens. No bustle here. No steaming pots or melting ice. Just rows of old wooden chests, their iron locks rusted slightly from time and humidity. A record room. But not for documents or maps, for recipes. This, you're told, is the Son Gutian archive. Part cookbook, part diary, part fever dream of long-forgotten flavor combinations. The scribes here don't wear kitchen aprons. They wear scholar robes. And the tools of their trade aren't knives, but brushes and powdered ink. Each recipe scroll is handwritten, painstakingly inked on rice paper, bound between slats of bamboo or folded into little fabric packets for safekeeping. And not a single one has a proper title like coconut kim or mango sorbet. Instead, they have names like the snow that weeps, beneath the moon, the persimmon waits, coolness on the day of rebellion. Are these poems? Are these codes? You open one scroll. The first line reads, gather ice before the fourth watch, while the stars still cling to the roof tiles. You're hooked. This is not modern instruction. This is flavor as myth, dessert as art. Every scroll feels like it's speaking in riddles, and maybe that's the point. After all, if you're making ice cream for an emperor, it can't just be cold. It has to whisper. It has to haunt. Point one scroll catches your eye. It describes a frozen custard made with egg yolk, palm sugar, and a single roasted peanut crushed between silver coins. The writer insists it must be eaten under moonlight, or the spirit of the dish will remain asleep. Is that metaphor? Or superstition? Historians still argue whether these poetic directives were meant literally or just reflected the aesthetic values of the time. What's certain is that recipes were rarely treated as fixed formulas. They were more like musical scores, guides for interpretation, not replication. In fact, most of these entries include strange notations at the end, like, too heavy for late summer, caused the poet to dream of drowning. Excellent during morning season. Suggested addition, bitter melon. Rejected by the third wife. She said it tasted of surrender. And here's where the weirdness begins. Point one bundle of scrolls is marked with a red thread. You open it carefully. The ink is older, faded, almost brittled. It describes a kim made not for pleasure, but for mourning. According to the scroll, this flavor was reserved for imperial funerals, an offering meant to accompany the spirit of the dead. Ingredients include burnt rice, lotus seed paste, black sesame, and a single drop of star anise oil. But what makes this dessert strange isn't the ingredients. It's the instruction, the scribe writes. Once frozen, the kim must not be touched by sunlight. It must be served at dusk, in silence. No spoon. The eater must use fingers only. If done properly, the deceased will taste it on their way to the river. Chilling, isn't it? And yes, you ask, did they really believe the dead could taste ice cream? Maybe not in the literal sense. But in Vietnamese court culture, food was tied deeply to the spiritual world. Ancestor altars, ghost festivals, offerings made at graves. Food wasn't just for the living. It was a bridge between this life and the next. Even in Kim, that belief melted through. Back in the room, one elderly scribe shuffles over to you and hands you a tiny folded note. This one, he says, was never officially approved by the court. He winks. Too dangerous. You unfold it. The title, The Quiet Smile of the Assassin's Wife. You pause. That's specific. The recipe is short, almost bare bones. Crushed lychee, black sugar, a dash of lime. Frozen quickly, served with chilled rice crackers. No notes, no poetry, no haunting metaphors. You ask him, why was it dangerous? He smiles. Because it was too good. Later that day, you learn this recipe was a favorite of a concubine known only as Lady M. She wasn't famous for beauty. She wasn't famous for poetry. She was infamous for something else, surviving 6 assassination plots in a single year. Each one foiled during or immediately after dessert. Coincidence? The imperial scribes thought not. Rumors flew. Was she lacing her ice cream with antidotes? Was she whispering secrets into her sorbets? Or maybe, just maybe, her kim was so disarming, so divinely perfect, that would-be killers forgot their mission entirely. Historians still debate whether Lady M ever existed. Some say she's a fiction stitched together from kitchen gossip and court scandal. Others believe she was real and very clever with her ingredients. You roll up the scroll and place it back in its sleeve. Whether real or not, it adds to the truth you've been circling for days now. Kim, in the imperial palace, was never just dessert that it was memory. It was ritual. It was seduction, sometimes even strategy. And maybe that's why these recipes were kept secret, hidden behind poems and riddles and warnings. Because to understand a flavor fully was to understand its power. And power, in this place, was the most dangerous ingredient of all. Twilight returns to the palace with a theatrical flair. Dusky gold spills down tiled rooftops. The cicadas start tuning up, and a hint of wood smoke curls lazily from the servants' quarters. And once again, the cooks are preparing ice. Tonight, though, you're not in the kitchen. You're deep underground. Back where the ancient pit sits, surrounded by aged bricks and that ever-present hush that comes with secrets too old for sunlight. But this time, you're not just observing that you're helping. Sort of, they've handed you a chisel. Which sounds exciting, until you realize your job is basically chop the ice so the fancier people can use it later. Still, it's an honor. At least, that's what the chef told you. And after the last few days of whispers, scrolls, and edible metaphors, a bit of honest labor feels like a good palate cleanser. The ice blocks are pulled up from the base of the pit with quiet ceremony. You touch one. It's heavy, cloudy, and somehow still glistening in the low light, like moonstone. Your job is to carve it into pieces just the right size to chill the mixing bowls above. Not too big, not too small. Too big, and the freezing process takes too long. Too small, and the chem turns slushy. Balance again. Always balanced, as you work, a cook beside you. Young, probably new. Leans in and asks, "Did you hear about the emperor's disappearing sherbet?" You blink. The what? He nods. One summer, the emperor's favorite chem kept vanishing before it reached his tray. They blamed a thief. The guard dogs. The servants. Turned out, he leans closer, clearly enjoying the drama. It was the emperor himself. He'd go down at night and eat it right out of the freezing pot. Said it tasted better when stolen. Historians still argue whether this was Emperor Jia Long or Min Mang, but the story persists. And honestly, you kind of get it. There's something undeniably thrilling about sneaking cold dessert in the dark, barefoot, half laughing. Another cook chimes in. That's nothing. My aunt told me the emperor once demanded chem made with rainwater caught on the first day of spring. You pause. Why? He said it tasted like a new beginning. Sure that you're about to ask whether that new beginning ended in indigestion when someone up top shouts for more ice. You pass the blocks up, watching them disappear into bowls of custard, fruit, and herbal syrups. And for a moment, everything slows down. The hammering, the shouting, the stories, and in the silence, you feel it. That odd, beautiful reverence for something as simple as frozen sweetness. Not just as food, but as a ritual that connects everyone from emperors to servants. Because in this palace, chem is both inheritance and invention. You're never just recreating the past. You're participating in an unbroken experiment, one scoop at a time. Take, for example, the fire and ice chem. Oh yes, it existed. 18th century scroll describes a dessert chilled with ice, but spiced with powdered ginger and chili oil. It created what the writer called a contradiction that awakens the soul. It was meant to be eaten with a slice of salted starfruit. And, if you were being dramatic, while listening to a gong being struck precisely 9 times. Historians still debate whether the gong bit was real or just metaphorical nonsense. And then there was the invisible chem, a bizarre creation that reportedly had no color, no scent, and no garnish. It was coconut milk, rice flour, and agar chilled until nearly transparent. Served in a black bowl. No spoons allowed, just the fingers to feel the cold. The effect? Supposedly it made the eater taste nothing, and then everything. Sounds pretentious, but also intriguing. Even now, some modern chefs in Vietnam try to recreate these recipes. Not just the flavors, but the entire experience. Mood, setting, lighting, even ambient sound. Because chem, like music, depends on context. The right notes don't always land if the wrong story plays beneath them. You glance over at the pit again. One of the older cooks is finishing a batch of black sesame and ginger sorbet. She moves slowly, deliberately. You watch her test the texture with her fingers, scoop a bit into a small ceramic dish, and sniff it. Like she's reading a book. She doesn't taste it. Just nods once and sends it up. Later, you'll hear she was once the personal dessert chef for a visiting ambassador. When the ambassador asked for something cool but unforgettable, She served him fermented lotus root ice cream that he never forgot. Mostly because it gave him hiccups for 3 days. The evening air deepens now, cool and sticky. Somewhere in the garden, frogs are starting to sing. You sit on the edge of the pit and realize your hands are cold, your sleeves dusted in frost. And yet, you don't want to leave. Because here, in this strange underground world of stone and steam, you're not just learning about dessert. You're learning about patience, about poetry, about how something as fleeting as flavor can carry the weight of empires. And maybe, just maybe, you're beginning to understand the secret that all those scrolls were trying to tell you. That ice cream, like stories, like people, is only temporary. But the memory of it, that's what lingers. The night is thick now, soft and warm like a velvet curtain drawn across the capital. Lanterns blink gently across the palace walls, casting flickers on old mosaics. Somewhere, a bamboo wind chime keeps the rhythm of time's exhale. And upstairs, trays are being arranged for the final course of the imperial meal that you're allowed to follow. Not as a servant, not as a cook, just as a guest. One who's earned, through story and sweat, the right to see how it ends. The hallway you step into is unusually quiet. Paved in cool ceramic, lined with paintings of clouds, cranes, and whispering bamboo. Every footstep is muffled by woven reed mats. And at the end, a door of lacquered wood, flanked by 2 guards who look like they haven't blinked since the rice harvest. That you're not going through that door. Of course not, that you're headed to a small service alcove adjacent to the emperor's dining chamber. From here, you can peek through a silk screen and observe the ritual unfold. And it is very much a ritual. Every movement rehearsed, every bowl placed with precision, every gesture performed with both pride and fear, because this is where Kim reaches its final form. That tonight's dessert is a special one, commissioned days in advance, blessed by a monk, and infused with ingredients gathered from 4 distant provinces. Tamarind syrup from the south, preserved orange blossom from the Red River Delta, crushed mung bean from a northern mountain village, and, of course, the secret fermented sticky rice that has whispered through this whole story like a ghost. The bowls are carved from green jade, cool to the touch. Inside, the Kim gleams, a sunset swirl of amber and pale gold, topped with a translucent leaf made of spun sugar. It looks like it might fly away. The emperor leans forward. He says nothing, just dips the long-handled spoon into the bowl, lifts the first bite to his lips, and pauses. Because, as always, the first taste isn't just about flavor, it's about silence, stillness, that space between one breath and the next. Only after that moment passes does the spoon return to the bowl. And again, there's no praise given. That's not how this works. The dessert's success is measured by the absence of interruption. If it fails, the emperor would have stopped eating. That's it. No tantrum, just a pause. A bowl set aside. A quiet signal to start fearing for your future. But tonight, there's no pause, which means tonight's dessert has done its job. In the corner, the chef who oversaw it all finally allows herself a breath. She lowers her head. Not a smile exactly, but something like relief. You lean back from the screen and take a moment, realizing how strange and beautiful this all is. In a world of war, politics, betrayals, and ambition, this is what they fight to preserve. The softness of a cold spoon. The way scent can travel further than armies. The way a perfectly made dessert can stitch together a dynasty, one evening at a time. You walk slowly out of the chamber, past the kitchens, past the old ice pit, past the tiny garden where citron trees sway gently in the breeze, and you realize none of this was ever really about ice cream. It was about power, about memory, about the quiet spaces where history gets written in sugar and silence. But now, the palace fades behind you. The night air carries the hum of frogs, the flicker of fireflies, and the fading clink of dishes being washed far away. And maybe, just maybe, you're ready to return home, because the story has been told, and the spoon has been set down. So now, as the final echoes of palace footsteps drift away and the faintest trace of tamarind still lingers in the corners of your mind, you begin to feel it. That sweet, slow exhale, the kind that only comes when a journey ends. Your muscles ease, your breath softens. You've wandered through chambers of whispering cooks, sifted through scrolls that read like dreams, and watched the last emperor's dessert melt into legend. And all of it, every cold spoon, every fragrant note of fermented rice, every poetic recipe, has led you gently here. There's no need to hold on to the names anymore. No need to remember whether the ginger syrup came from the north or the south. What matters is the feeling, the warmth of history under your fingertips, The strange comfort of knowing that even emperors paused for something sweet. Oh, take one last breath. Let the sounds of frogs and fans blend softly together in your room. Let your limbs grow heavy. Let your thoughts drift gently backward, through winding palace corridors, through snowy ice pits, through bites of memory that vanish as quickly as they came. Because tonight, you have tasted the past, and it was cold, and rich, and quietly alive. Now, close your eyes, and let the dream do the rest.